History hides its worst truths. A village that chose death. A state that sterilized its own. A father who kidnapped a murderer for justice. And spy pigeons. 10 facts that you didn't know. And now, unburied. Welcome to Dark Chronicles. In the summer of 1666, the plague reached the remote English village of Eyam through a bolt of cloth delivered from London. As villagers began dying, they made a radical decision. Rather than flee and risk spreading the disease, they voluntarily quarantined themselves. Boundaries were set. No one came in and no one left. Food was dropped at the outskirts. Over 260 of the 350 villagers died in brutal isolation. But their sacrifice likely prevented the spread of the plague across northern England. Eyam didn't vanish, but its self-imposed martyrdom almost did. A village that chose collective death over survival remains one of the quietest stories of communal courage in the face of annihilation. A year after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, his younger brother Alfred Daniel King was found dead, floating in his own swimming pool. There were no signs of trauma, but the family suspected foul play. Then, in 1974, their mother Alberta Williams King was shot and killed while playing the organ in church by a man who claimed Christians were his enemy. The King family didn't just suffer from a single historic murder, they were systematically hunted down. What remains is not only a legacy of resistance but a trail of quiet, accumulating tragedy. During the Great Depression, the United States government funded one of the most hauntingly beautiful missions in American history. Women, mostly poor and unmarried, were hired to ride on horseback into the isolated hollows of Appalachia to deliver books. They faced wild terrain, snake bites, blizzards, and sometimes suspicion. But they came anyway, every week, carrying knowledge to those who had nothing. It was called the Packhorse Library Project. Forgotten by most history books, these writers helped keep literacy alive in some of the poorest, most overlooked regions of America. Some of them died along the way, but no one ever turned back. So, back in 1937, Sylvan Goldman invented something he called the basket carriage for self-service stores. Basically, it looked like a baby stroller with baskets. But you know, shoppers absolutely hated it. Men just refused to use them. They thought it was, well, kind of emasculating. And women said it felt like pushing a pram. Honestly, no one wanted to be seen with one. So Goldman ended up hiring models to walk through stores pretending to shop with carts. Gradually, the idea started to catch on. And now, shopping carts are everywhere. These sort of soulless icons of consumption. What started as a ridiculed invention is now a global necessity. Few people remember that it had to be, well, faked into existence. Before we move on, if you're still watching, you're part of a rare group. Most people scroll past this kind of history. But if you're here, you're not most people. Consider subscribing. That's how stories like these survive. Before satellites, before drones, armies actually turned to birds. In World War I and well into the 20th century, militaries used pigeons fitted with these tiny, lightweight cameras to capture aerial reconnaissance images. And honestly, the results were surprisingly effective. The pigeons would fly over enemy lines, snapping photos from above. One surviving camera, recovered in Germany, contained these haunting panoramas of wartime landscapes. Abandoned trenches, shattered villages, columns of soldiers. The birds returned, totally unaware they had documented the destruction of human life from such an inhuman perspective. War has always relied on strange tools. Few were as quietly surreal as a pigeon with a lens. In the early 1900s, a New York theater advertised an odd challenge: $1,000 to any comedian who could make sober Sue laugh. Comedians lined up. None succeeded. Night after night, Sue just sat there in silence, stone-faced, actually becoming an attraction in herself. Audiences came just to see entertainers humiliate themselves. But the twist was honestly pretty cruel. Sue, it turned out, had facial paralysis. She physically couldn't laugh. The entire premise was a deception, an act built on exploiting her condition and, well, the egos of others. The audience never realized they were the punchline. Rome's Metro C line has been under construction for more than 40 years. Not because of mismanagement, but because honestly every attempt to dig beneath the city keeps hitting ancient ruins. In the process, engineers have unearthed Hadrian's Athenaeum, a Roman military barracks, and a long-forgotten amphitheater. Each discovery halts progress, triggering archaeological salvage operations that can take years. Rome is literally built on its own graves. Every foot of rail demands excavating layers of empire, war, worship, and ruin. Modern infrastructure just has to wait its turn in a city haunted by its foundations. Chung Ju-young was born in poverty in Japanese-occupied Korea. At 16, he stole a cow from his family, sold it, and used the money to escape to Seoul. Decades later, he founded Hyundai. In 1998, at the height of his power, Chung returned to his childhood village in North Korea. He brought with him 1,001 cows, repaying symbolically the one he had stolen 1,000 times over. For North Korean citizens starving under dictatorship, it was more than just a gesture. It was a quiet breach in the DMZ, an offering from a capitalist who never forgot the price of his ticket out. In 1995, a French court convicted Dieter Krombach of killing 14-year-old Kalinka Bambursky, but because he was German and France couldn't extradite him, Krombach remained free. For over a decade, Kalinka's father, Andrei Bambursky, watched the man who murdered his daughter evade justice. In 2009, he hired men to kidnap Krombach from Germany, drag him across the border, and dump him, bruised and handcuffed, outside a French courthouse. It worked. Krombach was arrested and sentenced. The law had failed, so a grieving father found his own way. Not everyone condemned him. Between 1970 and 1976, the U.S. government sterilized between 1/4 and 1/2 of all Native American women of childbearing age. Many were not told what was happening. Some were only 15. Doctors were paid per procedure. Consent forms were signed under duress, or even forged. This was not ancient history. It happened under the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Despite lawsuits and testimonies, few Americans are even aware of it. Entire bloodlines were severed under bureaucratic programs cloaked as healthcare. It's a part of history the state would prefer be forgotten, and largely it has been. By the early 1940s, British and American cryptographers had cracked both the German Enigma and Japanese naval codes. This gave them, unprecedented access to enemy strategies. But the knowledge came with a moral cost. If the Allies responded to every intercepted plan, the Axis would suspect their codes were compromised. So the Allies often let attacks happen. Ships were sunk, soldiers ambushed, lives sacrificed, as in Coventry, where Churchill let Axis forces bombard the town to protect the secret that they knew everything. Intelligence is rarely clean. Sometimes knowing too much means doing nothing. Jimmy Carter was inaugurated in 1977. Since then, he's lived through over 4 decades of post-presidency, longer than any U.S. president in history. He survived brain cancer, returned to teaching Sunday school, and built homes for the poor with his bare hands. In 2019, he turned 95. In 2023, he entered hospice care. As of this writing, he remains alive. Carter's presidency was turbulent, but his afterlife has been quietly radical. He never cashed in, never retreated, just kept showing up. In the theater of American politics, he became something rare, a man who mattered more after the curtain fell. Each of these stories isn't just strange or dark. They reveal something deeper. Human choices made under pressure, truths we were never meant to see, forgotten moments that still echo. If these are the kinds of stories you want more of, the quiet ones that stay with you, subscribe. The rest of the world looks away, but here, we look closer.